You know, there's a lot of great OU podcasts, but there's only one where the horns are always down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Horns Down Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Horns Down Podcast. Long time no talk, not only to Mr. Mason, but to everybody out there that watches this pod. Listen, people, as you can see, Stephen G is already in here with some heat. He said, "Hey, Sooners Cowboy, you ready for talking season to be over with?" I am so ready. Hold on. Sooner Cowboys is in here. He says, "I'm so ready as well." That's one of the reasons why you haven't seen too much of me. It's a lot of talking going on, a lot of stuff that's going on. And in the immortal words, if you watch this podcast, if you've been a loyal listener to this podcast, you know that I echo these sentiments of arguably one of the greatest, or if not the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, Aaron Rodgers. RELAX. Relax. It's okay, people. Let the Pickels, let the Josh Pates, let the Ty Hayes of the world, let all of them just talk. It is what it is. We about to figure some things out. But with that being said, I got my guy. I got the legend himself, one of the super duper recruiting analysts, guy that basically is on the money, no fluff. Mr. Kchris Mason is here from Sooners 360. Guys, look at the bio of this video. You'll see all the details to find him on Patreon, to find his Twitter, to find the website, all those different things. They're going to be there. But I'll let the man talk to you guys himself to tell you how you can subscribe, how much the Patreon costs, all those different things, where they can find all your wonderful content.
Yeah, so the Patreon is $2 a month as a free trial, so you can sort of dip in and see if you like the experience. You can also find me on YouTube. Just simply look for Sooners 360, and you can find all of my content and all of my updates if you follow me on X/Twitter at CM_Sooners360. So and of course the Sooners 360 podcast, the recruiting podcast, is also available. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll get links to that, so you can follow it and subscribe. So I'm also doing that, and that show is on all platforms, podcast platforms, plus on YouTube.
Yes. And hey, look, guys, like, subscribe, do all those different things. We're over here growing the channel. I think we're 230, maybe a little bit over that, as far as being close to 1,000 subscribers. So it would mean a lot to the channel to be able to do that. You guys know we've been plugging for a while over here, but like I said, we're not here for a long time, but we're here for a good time. Damn sure of that. So with that being said, Mr. Mason, let's go ahead and get right into the recruiting. Fasusi is going to be committing at some point. Now,
no, at some point. We are now 5 days and counting.
We're that close to it. Okay.
We are
Okay.
5 days and counting. It is going to be August 21st. We don't have a time yet.
Okay.
But we're 5 days away.
Okay, so I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Beatenbow can get this 5-star, right? How confident are you?
Well, I would say 2 days ago, I was like 6.5 out of 5. And then, as Stephen G just posted in the chat, shout out to Stephen G, something happened over the last 2 days which has given me more confidence. So there's an old recruiting rule of thumb I used to follow, Chris, and that would be anytime OU is recruiting a player against the University of Texas, and whenever a Texas homer like Jeff Ketchum or the guys at Inside Texas, and I'm being very maybe generous there, anytime they start admitting defeat, or in Ketchum's case, he flipped his forecast from Texas to OU. So anytime a Texas writer says that a kid's going to OU, that used to be like a stone cold lock, right? Like anytime that used to happen, that's a stone cold lock. OU's getting that guy, because Texas writers aren't projecting anyone to go to OU unless, it's a foregone conclusion. Now, NIL has made some of those things a little more difficult, a little less terra firma. But I would say right now, Friday, 8:52 Eastern time, in Atlanta, in my recruiting headquarters, I would move it up to Fasusi to 7.5. Like the Texas guys already started to come up with excuses like they don't want Fasusi. The 2026 guy they're after, John Turntine, is better. They're looking elsewhere. Fasusi isn't that good. Anytime you start getting, Texas doesn't really want him. Anytime the recruit excuses start building up from the Texas websites, something's going on. So
let's get to the nitty gritty part, because I know people are going to want to know this as well. And we can save this kind of, because I know we'll probably try to do another video when he commits, right?
Yeah.
But if you could just briefly describe what type of player would OU get, and how does he add to that offensive line? Not only what he means for this class, but what would he add to the offensive line, especially for Beatonbow?
Well, he would. So I'm going to take you into the Wayback recruiting machine here, and I'm pretty sure this is accurate. So for starters, he would be the highest rated offensive line recruit for Oklahoma since Wes Sims in 2001. So OU has only signed one legit 5-star offensive lineman in between, if they got Fasusi. Wes Sims was the last one. Stephen Good, depending upon the ranking system, is maybe the only other one. Bray Walker wasn't a consensus 5-star. He was like number 35. Fasusi is the number 11 player in the nation by a number of services. Consensus top 12. He's 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds. I think the most horrifying thing I've ever seen is watching him play dodgeball. There's video of him online on Twitter playing dodgeball, and he's surrounded by just like a regular group of high school kids you expect to be playing dodgeball, right? And North Dallas from Louisville, right? Just a regular mix of kids. And then there's a 6'6", 300-pound guy dodging, jumping, and throwing dodgeball, hitting kids with dodgeballs. It's going to be frightening. He's a big target, but he's also, the power that he throws the ball at is probably ridiculous. That's kind of the joking, but he's incredibly athletic. It's the best raw materials given to Bill Beatonbow since he's been the OU coach. If you talk about the best set of raw materials, and this is the best set of raw materials in terms of an offensive tackle that he's had, and he's the best. He's the highest ranked guy. You're talking about a player probably in the same category of athlete as Anton Harrison, maybe a little bigger, a little longer, but similar type athlete. And you're also, if you do get him, you're also denying Texas a 5-star offensive tackle in the future. So it's a double win, right? You don't not only do you add him to your offensive line, Danny Okoye and CJ Nixon won't have to worry about this guy blocking them. So it's in terms of that, it's David Stone like in terms of the offensive line. Bill's never had a guy this talented with these sort of raw tools, other than Tyler, Guyton, which was sort of, that's sort of a Bill. Obviously, I think once Bill realized he was in the portal, looked at this film, I'm sure Bill was like, "Oh, holy crap! Look at what TCU is losing. What can I grab?" So I think it would be, and momentum wise, it's huge for the OU class. OU's had it's been very quiet since Floyd Boucard verbaled. They've fallen in the rankings on a couple of the services. I've talked about that on my Patreon site and on my podcast. OU's outside the top 10 with two of the ranking services. I think they have a chance to get back in the top 10 on the 247 composite, but I don't know how they get back in the top 10 of On3's rankings, composite rankings, without some of their recruits getting big jumps. But Fasusi it's a huge momentum win. It's a big win for Bill. I think it validates the Anton Harrison, Tyler Guyton back-to-back first-round selections that's paying off in recruiting. So I think it's similar to Todd Bates winning the David Stone commitment. That's about the only thing I can really compare it to.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, got me thinking right now. So with that being said, so you said you moved up to about 7.5 as far as your confidence level. You've made some great comps. You talked about him being really agile, athletic, and all the rest of that stuff. Has that been kind of, is that the trend that's going on right now? I guess with this offensive line, it's something I think people are not talking about, is that when you look at guys like, I think you got your power with a guy like Akin Kumi, right? Probably he's still agile. He's raw right now, but I know they're getting him in line. But you got your Autry's of the world, but you got your EPLs, your Brooks guys who, EPL is just, he really honestly, he's an athletic freak, right? But when you look at the offensive line and some of the guys they're getting, you see those power guys who are just grab you, get you, and you're not moving or doing anything. But it seems to me they're making a trend to become a really, really athletic offensive line. Maybe that's something that you're seeing simply because we're going to the SEC, and that's kind of what you need. But it feels like we're trending to become like a more athletic offensive line than we have been in the past. Does that make sense?
Well, when you look at Ryan Foji, who's already verbaled, and you look at Fasusi, Babalola, Ty Haywood, even Lamont Rogers, they're all really good athletes for their size, right? Mm-hmm. So they're basically, they have all the measurables you want. Some of them are technique raw, how ready they are is sort of a continuum, how raw they are. But when you look at all four of those guys that that we've been talking about for months, seems like since January, they are all sort of your, Chris, I like to call it sort of like, a short NBA power forward at offensive tackle is kind of what I like to talk about. Like, Guyton is 6'7", 300, but he doesn't, 315, but he doesn't look that size. Fasusi, again, is 6'5", 300 pounds, 305 pounds, and he just looks lean. He almost looks like a power, what you think a power forward would look like from the NBA. And all those other guys, same thing. A couple of guys they're recruiting for 2026 fit that model as well. So, yeah, I do think maybe OU Bill is sort of focused on, okay, I'm going to be facing 5-star defensive ends from at least 3 or 4 teams on my schedule every year, right? I mean, Bama's going to have a 5-star defensive end. Georgia will. Tennessee has one this year. LSU usually is going to have one. Auburn certainly seems to be determined to buy one. Their money machine is going crazy right now. Mm-hmm. They got some fake money press somewhere, and just printing money left and right for whatever NIL thing they've got going on. So yeah, I think it's maybe a realization that you're going to play 6 games again. You're going to play 6 opponents in the SEC who all have an NFL first round type defensive end, whereas in the Big 12, maybe you'd face Umazoma from K-State, the guy from Iowa State, Will McDonald, I think it was.
Yeah.
You'd face, maybe TCU would have a guy, maybe Texas has a guy, but generally speaking, you'd face like maybe 2 of them you'd be facing 2 first-round defensive ends on your schedule, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But now I think, Bill, and the reality is that you're probably going to be facing 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So you cannot have at left tackle a big lumbering guy. He's going to get your quarterbacks killed. You've got to have
that. You saw that last year with Alabama, which I think Proctor is going to be better simply because he's cut weight, but second all, I think that DeBoer system is going to be friendlier to him. His game is coming in as a freshman. His game is probably more geared towards the NFL in certain situations, right? Simply because those guys are athletic freaks as well. No matter if they go and get a guy from Mount Vernon, Mississippi State, right? They're trying to they're going to get those athletic freaks that are all over the field and just continue to grow their games or whatnot. T Boomer had a good question. He said, what do y'all think? What do y'all think we did to turn the table? I mean, to get the table to turn, excuse me.
I think it purely comes down to the official visits in June. Michael Fasusi and his family really likes OU. They've been to OU more than anywhere else. Mm-hmm. OU, I mean, Bill has been working Michael Fasusi since last May. And Texas has been working him, probably heavily since January. So he's been to OU more times. His family's been to OU more often. Bill has been front and center with his family for the longest time. I think when they came back for their official visit to OU, mm-hmm. Michael's host was Daniel Akinkimi, great guy. Daniel is, if you know Daniel on social media, he's all about his brand, all about building his brand. He's a social, gregarious kid. If you've ever had the chance to talk to him, Chris, if you ever can get him as a guest host on your show, Daniel is a gregarious kid. He's great. He's just so friendly. I had a chance to talk to him before for his OU visit. And I think Daniel and Michael just sort of hit it off. And mm-hmm. they're both, Daniel Akinkimi is like second generation, I think British African would be the best way to say that. Yeah. His family's from Nigeria originally. His grandparents were from Nigeria, emigrated to England. Michael's family is from Nigeria. They have immigrated to America. I'm not quite sure the generational fit there, but I think they just clicked. And then, you could just tell in those photos, Michael trusts Bill. He has a great relationship with Bill. He posted, on Twitter after his OU visit, the GOAT, and it's a photo of him with Bill. So I think that visit I think Michael Fasusi fell back in love with OU again, right? OU was leading for him for the longest time. And then Texas made this big run, and everyone's like, he's going to Texas. I think he just fell back in love with OU on the official visit. And then he went on his Texas visit, and I think it just sort of fell flat. He didn't, I don't know who their host was. I don't know if maybe they tried to take him to, I don't know, whatever. Their pitch just fell flat. And even Texas sites were like, ooh, this visit didn't go great. And then everyone started saying, well, the OU visit went fantastic. The OU people feel like they knocked it out of the park. And OU has picked up a lot of kids from that weekend that Fasusi was in town. Mm-hmm. They picked up Floyd Boucard. They picked up the two wide receivers, Harris and Cortez Mills. Mm-hmm. So they had something cooking that weekend in terms of the kids getting together, meeting each other, just things were working. So I think that visit is when Fasusi fell back in love with OU. And, it didn't hurt also that the draft had happened fairly recently. Tyler Guyton, right? The draft is at the end of April. I have those that's right. Guyton drafted by the Cowboys, all over Dallas media, and Fasusi,
and looks good, if I may add. Looks like he's going to be.
He's going to be starting for him, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, that's not not going unnoticed by Michael. Maybe in the last couple of weeks. So I think it was the visit that basically Fasusi was saying, "Well, I want to." Bagman saying, "OU needs a fifth lineman commit if they get Fasusi." You're completely right, Bagman. Completely agree with you. But yeah, I think it was the visit that basically OU put their message all forward and landed. And then he went to Texas and let me go back to Texas. And then Texas, maybe they assumed they were getting Fasusi. Maybe the host situation didn't quite click as well. I mean, we've seen that before. Just the smallest things can sometimes push things in recruiting that we don't quite understand. So I think it was the official visits that put OU back in the lead. And then I think, Texas wasn't able to do anything after that because it was a dead period, right? He went to Texas. There was a dead period. So
you would expect Texas to probably be able to win a battle like this maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whenever NIL was a new thing. But we keep trying to tell Texas fans, look, we're not broke. We're not a poor school or $1 billion in debt, like contrary to your belief. And that's not even a knock on like Texas fans. That's just a knock on just I don't know.
This weird perception that somehow
it's just a weird perception
that OU didn't just outbid LSU and God knows who else for Dominic Williams.
I was gonna say Jimmy has a good question real quick. Can Foji move into 5-star radius?
If his senior film justifies it, completely yes. He's gone from sort of in a 12-month time period, folks thinking he was like 6'6", 250. To he's or 6'5", 250, 260. Last numbers I saw that he posted, he's saying he's 6'6", 295 now. And if he's as athletic as everyone thinks he is, and he's looked great at the camps and everything he's gone to, yeah, there's a good chance. I mean, it's a great O-line class. David Sanders from North Carolina, from the Charlotte area, is committing tomorrow. He's the number 1 offensive tackle in the country. Then I think it's kind of a grab bag between Haywood, Fasusi, Babalola. That's probably the guys I would say in there. But, can Foji move into the top 30? He could, yeah, very easily. He's got those he has the measurables to be an elite offensive lineman. It's Foji and Fasusi would be the two, high school wise. The best raw materials Bill's gotten, since Anton Harrison, and I don't have another comp after that. I mean, Orlando Brown was great, but Orlando was great because he knew how to use his massive frame to his advantage. But he's not Orlando Brown is not the athlete these guys are.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. No, I just think that we're making a transition to a more athletic line. I think you're going to have some of those guys, especially because Bill's going to work that portal. So I think you're going to have some of like your staples, some of your guys that are, just I guess you're going to have big hog mollies, but not athletic, freaks per se, like some of the guys that we're getting with those intangibles. You're going to get ready-made guys that you can glue in there if a guy still needs maybe another year or so before he's ready to be on the field contributing, right? So
yeah, I mean, if you think about if OU was to get Fasusi next fall, the offensive tackle room would be Jacob Sexton, who is a big athletic guy, Jake Taylor, who's maybe a little bit more of a right tackle power guy, kind of a combo guard tackle kind of guy, but then Logan Howland, who's an incredible athlete. If you watched his high school senior year film and watched his junior film, he's playing tight end. So he's one of those tight end conversions that's taking a little while. He's now 6'7", 320. Yeah. Okay. Then you've got Autry Dent. Isaiah Autry Dent, because he's added Dent to his last name, I think, to honor one of his parents. Who's 6'6", 310. Daniel Akinkimi, who's 6'6", 305. And then you can add, then you add Michael Fasusi, possibly. He's 6'6", 300. And Ryan Foji, who's 6'6", 300. I mean, that's a tackle room which is getting you very close to being out of the need to go to the portal for tackles. Yeah. Right? Stop shopping when it's more expensive and less payoff, right? And you don't know quite what you're getting. Same at defensive tackle, where OU's very close to being out of the defensive tackle transfer, portal business. So I think that's what you think about. If you can get those guys, all of a sudden, you now have stacked 3 classes of offensive tackles, and you're like thinking, okay, I now have some depth, and I've got some guys with serious ability.
And you just said a word that I wanna take some time on real quick just to talk about. So you said classes. So let's talk about next year's class and kind of what's going on. We see Stephen G is in here. He's saying, so is 2026 a real year or not? You got Sooner Cowboys. He's in here saying, I hope OU can land Tank Carrington and Deuce Gerald's. enlighten us. What are your thoughts about, those guys? Maybe not even those guys per se, but just this 26 class. Is it shaping up nicely, or what are we doing?
Well, I'll talk about the two defensive tackles since it was it was a good question, and there's obviously talk about that. So he's talking about two 5-star, fringe 5-star, 3 techniques for 2026. Tank Carrington from Vegas and Deuce Gerald's from Georgia, who's an Ole Miss alum. They're both 6'2", 6'3", 265, and just blurs off the line.
Mm-hmm.
They're like they'll be 280, 285, 290, but they're 3 techs. OU's in great position with both of them. Gerald's an Ole Miss alum, so you've got to battle that a little bit, but he seems to really like OU and Todd Bates. Carrington, the same thing. So OU's definitely in line for those. Offensive line-wise for 2026, OU's in fantastic shape because they had a fantastic summer camp session. They offered a number of kids. A couple of them I really like on the interior, both from Texas. One's from Euless Trinity. And his name, I call him Katoa because I don't want to butcher his first name, but his first name is like Pupanga Toa. Pupanga Toa, I think that's it. Katoa is his name. And Kchris, he's 6'4", 360, and he looks like he's maybe 310, 315 with the way he moves. He's an absolute bruiser. If you remember Euless Trinity, that used to be like the place you went to go find bruising offensive guards in Texas high school football. OU's had a player for them, Nila Casatiti, from the 2015 playoff team, the starting offensive guard for that team. He's from Euless Trinity. And then there's recruiting another guy from, I believe, Midland, and his name is Pulelite Primus.
Oh boy, these names are going to be crazy to try to pronounce over the next few years.
Yeah, well, I haven't even gotten the defensive tackle nose guard I just posted on Twitter today. I'm doing kind of a 31 prospects for August that OU fans need to get to know from 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just calling him TI because his name is is amazing. So Primus is 6'4", 6'5", 320.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he moves so well. So very good athlete. But they have an offensive tackle from Mansfield, Texas. His name's Felix Ojo. It's OJO. And his family's originally from, I believe, Nigeria as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's 6'7", 285. And he looks like a power forward. He's all arms. He's exactly what you're talking about. Like if you want to try and combat one of these 6'5", 255 defensive ends who are running like a 4.5 that every SEC team claims they have, you want a guy who's 6'7", 285 right now, will be 315 pounds after a good weight room year, who just has the arm length and the athleticism to stop them. So OU's in a good spot for the offensive line class for 2026. They already have I think, maybe the best quarterback in the class in Jaden O'Neal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they maybe have the best running back in the class with Jonathan Hatton. They've got Emmett Jones and wide receiver recruiting. Are we really even worried about that at this point?
Is Hatton? Are you a fan of Hatton? Do you like?
Oh yeah, love Hatton.
I know
love
my uncle and I talked, and I think early on he may have had some doubts, but
has he watched his recent? Did he watch his sophomore film?
That's what I gotta ask him. Have you seen the film? Because my uncle is always about the current film. He's like, I got to see the sophomore film because maybe he didn't see what he thought he was supposed to see in that freshman film. So maybe we'll see that. But I know he wasn't necessarily the biggest fan, but things could change, right?
DeMarco taking a freshman verbal. DeMarco, we'll see this year. Obviously, the running back game last year was a little over the place, but I put a lot of weight in DeMarco Murray's opinions there. Jimmy Satterfield just said Hatton is Mixon like, and there's some flashes in his receiving game and physical body wise, like Joe Mixon.
Hey, if we got another kid that can catch a ball one-handed and take it 60 yards, I ain't got no problem with him being on the roster.
So I think and they've got Ryder Mix, the tight end from Frisco Lone Star, who's really good, 6'4", 6'5", 235, right, 225, 230 right now. He'll play at 250 and be an every down two-way tight end. with all the weapons OU has, he'll end up being a top 200, top 250 player, I think. So yeah. So there's only one position, Chris, right now that I wouldn't say it worries me for 2026, but linebacker is the only position where I'm kind of wondering who OU might get. I can't. If you ask me to predict the 26 class right now, I could spin about 25 names for you easily, but I'd be missing some linebackers that I really thought that I would be having any confidence in. So Zach Alley's recruiting it's the only recruiting question I really have on staff.
Wait a minute.
That on the defensive side of the ball.
Wait a minute.
On the defensive side of the ball,
I'm about to say,
Zach Alley's the only guy I really got any question about. We know
JJA. Excuse me.
Well, he's on the offensive side of the ball, and he's already got. He's already got his 20.
Not JJA, JJF. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
He's already got his tight end for 2026, right? He's got Ryder Mix. So.
Hey, look, that is perfectly fine, but you gotta be more consistent. I think with Zach Alley, Zach Alley is being meticulous, and I think he is being purposeful with his recruiting. Now, Roof would have went ahead and got guys, but I don't know if they would have been guys, right? And plus, I think you're low. I think
Brent was getting the guys. So
yeah, I think you're loaded at that spot, but I think the type of guys he's trying to get, you to be honest with you, it's just about building that connection. You know that. I think people in here are asking. Stephen G asked Chris, "Do you think we can flip anyone in this cycle?" I mean, I think we can. I think linebacker would probably be the one position you would be looking at, simply because I think with the year they're about to have and what Zach Alley is going to be able to do, and he's a young, energetic guy, a good recruiter, I think that he's going to be okay. It's just landing those guys. That's the only thing that we're trying to do.
Well, if OU gets Christian Jones from Nebraska at linebacker, they're done at linebacker. Him and Mark and I'm a huge Marcus James fan. I think he's criminally underrated. Mm-hmm. If you watched his film from the OU summer camps, first off, I think the only problem I have with Marcus James is I'm concerned he might outgrow linebacker and turn into a fantastic rush end, because he's already 6'4", 220, and he looks huge. So big Marcus James fan. If he stays at linebacker, he's going to be like 6'4", 245 at Mike, just killing people. And he's so athletic, sideline to sideline. He's like the underrated guy on the Carl Albert team, right? Because of Haynes and Washington have got a little more of the hype there. So Trene Washington might end up being a better flex tight end than we think. At summer camp, he looked bigger, taller. And I think there's a good chance he could be like 6'4", 235 and be that flex tight end weapon that just works in this offense. So we'll see. But, overall, I think, when you're talking linebacker, if they get Christian Jones, I don't think that's linebacker done. The only question I would say is, Chris, Stuart Mandel from The Athletic, he's not an OU homer by any stretch, right? So he just put out something on The Athletic where he says OU starts the season 9-0. Okay. So that's Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Missouri, and Ole Miss. Am I right? Or is that Maine? Or is Maine? No, it's through Maine. So 9-0 through Maine with Missouri, LSU, and Bama left, right? So if OU's 9-0 heading into, let's say they're 9-1 heading into the, they're 10-1 heading into the Alabama game. Sorry, they'd be 9-1 heading into the Alabama game. I guarantee there's going to be some player who's like, well, maybe I should be in Norman instead, right? Like, okay, OU's got good NIL. Maybe I should be in Norman instead. If they go 9-0, there's going to be 2 or 3 super highly rated kids who OU wasn't making a lot of move on before.
Yeah.
That decided, that ended up that ended up flip. I don't know if they're going to flip, but they'll be on campus. OU will be rolling out the red carpet. There'll be 85,000 Sooner fans going nuts if we're 9-0, right? You know,
I tend to be optimistic.
Yeah. If we're 9-0, Norman's on fire, right?
Norman. Not only is Norman on fire, hell, the SEC is probably on fire trying to figure out.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I just watched some guy say that OU is going to be 6-6, 2-6 in the SEC. I'm like, okay, behind Arkansas. I'm like, what the hell? So whatever,
Coach. Look, Coach. You know I love you, man. You know, Coach. Look, you know you got my utmost respect. When you talk, I listen. But all I gotta say is, go worry about Texas A&M, okay? Because that's what Notre Dame has to deal with at first, okay? That Elko defense, right? If y'all thought what gosh, I'm forgetting his name. If y'all thought what Louisville had in store for y'all or something, you just might want to wait. So don't worry about OU business. Worry about Notre Dame business, okay? Keep your nose out of here. But so shout out to Coach. Shout out to Jason, Hall of Fame football college. But
let's say OU's 9-0, right? And humming, right?
Yeah,
on both sides of the ball. Will they have people coming to Norman, and will there be some couple of flip opportunities? Absolutely, right? I mean, if they're 6-0, beat Texas, have beaten Tennessee and Auburn. Everyone's trendy pick is that OU is going to lose at Auburn, right? That's the trendy pick out there, right? They're going to lose at Auburn. So if OU's 6-0 with the bye week, by the time they get back on campus for the South Carolina game, they could have a number of kids who are like, hey, let me get to Norman. I mean, could Lamont Rogers decide that Bill Biedenbau's who he wants developing him, not the Missouri guys? Maybe. Nate Roberts was thrown in the chat. Sure. So any number of kids could show up. But, yeah, it's 2025. It looks like it's over if they get Christian Jones and Fasusi. And I just don't believe this coaching staff is going to go 3 months without bringing in some 2025 kids and trying to work some flips. They're always looking to upgrade the roster.
Yeah.
They upgraded the roster this spring. They upgraded the roster in January portal and after the spring game portal. They've done that the last 2 years. Yeah. So
I mean, the one thing about this staff, you got to understand, guys, they look high, they look low, and they look late. And when I say they look late, they look deep into the class, meaning that second recruiting cycle or national, that's something to look out for as well, because there are those hidden gems, the Taylor Wines of the world or whatnot that I think you could see him in some instances this year. So no, I love the way this staff attacks in the way they approach and the way that they attack recruiting as well.
And Bagman brings up a good point. A player like Ty Haywood, okay, he's all set on Bama. Could Bama stumble a little bit? Maybe, but he's never visited OU. So you could bring him in for an official visit and he could decide, well, I'd rather be closer. My mom likes Alabama, but I'd rather be closer to her. Denton, the Denton guys are all blowing up for OU. And he's like, well, maybe I should go to OU instead, But the other thing, and remember, Chris, is the NCAA changed the whole 5 official visits thing. Players can now take as many official visits as they want.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys took 5 visits in June and May, right? And then they made their decisions. Usually you'd be like, well, that's it. If you can't get the guys for official visits, you can't flip them. Well, all of a sudden, OU could say, well, do you want to come visit us? And they could say, well, I can take another official visit. And not all schools have, Brent's policy that, take Ohio State last year, Isaiah, he's the freshman who's blowing up for them. Everyone's saying he's going to be great. He's the wide receiver from Florida, from actually Hollywood Brown School. Isaiah, fumbling with the name. But anyway, he's the number 1 wide receiver in the country last year. He was still taking visits. He was a Ohio State verbal for 12 months and took like 8 visits around the country. So the OU could, like Nate Roberts sees his brother catching a touchdown pass, gets all kind of emotional, decides he wants to take an official visit to OU and be closer to his family. Probably doesn't happen, but I don't know, maybe it does. So, so he does. He decides to flip. Does OU take Nate Roberts? Of course they do.
JJF, please.
Yeah. Well, of course, but of course you take him, right? Local kid, two-way tight end. You add him to the tight end mix, and it'll make that room even better. So, I think it's, I think it just you just don't know how all things could play out. Somebody asked if OU's 7-2, could they still get kids on campus? Yeah, it just depends what the 7-2 looks like and feels like, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's all about the feel of the season, man.
OU goes to Ole Miss and loses in overtime in the game of the year. That probably doesn't hurt OU, right? Yeah. The Texas game, everyone, people are trying to ask, for predictions time. And I just say, okay, we'll put the Texas game in the parking lot. That game is unpredictable. I mean, literally cannot predict that game at all.
Yeah. 60-yard touchdowns to start the,
you can't predict that game. So put it in a parking lot, right?
Well, so, since we're in that lane, let's go ahead. Let's switch gears a bit off of. We gave you guys 41 minutes worth of recruiting with those notes, but we're gonna, for these last however long we're on here, we're gonna talk about football, man. I mean, look, expectations for the season are all over the place. I think we've kind of beat that dead horse over the head so many times. I mean, fall camp, you're hearing things, first off, I'll say this right here. I hate that we lost Gibson. I am pleasantly surprised, and I am happy though with the news that came out. I think it was a patellar tendon. That's a big injury as well. It's a big blow, but at the same time, it's not an ACL. So it's something that I feel like he can, probably really bounce back from and not necessarily have to. And it happened right before the season started. So he's going to have all the time to really rehab that. So, and
he has an injury redshirt year. So
yeah,
he can use that. No petitioning, NCAA, no nonsense like that. Jaden played as a freshman, played as a sophomore. So he's got a redshirt year to use, I believe.
So for hopefully. And so for all you Thunder fans, remember Victor Oladipo, he had that same injury, basically came back. I think he tore it again or whatnot. Who was that had it? Was that Andre Roberson who had that injury as well? But he still
Durant had that. Did he tear?
No,
sorry, that was Achilles. Sorry,
Achilles. Yeah. So man, I mean, really, honestly, the biggest thing is just keeping guys healthy and making sure that we're healthy for game one. And I'll say this right here. This is the Horns Down podcast. Go ahead and subscribe, do all those different things, Horns Down. But I will say, hey, prayers out there to the Texas faithful with their guys. Because, I mean, I don't necessarily know how much the freshman was going to contribute, but blowing your Achilles, that's a huge thing, especially at that position. So hopefully he can bounce back healthy. Also losing Baxter, that's still a big blow.
That's a big blow.
That's a big blow. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Jaden Blue is a good back, but I think what you were going to be able to have with pretty much trying to maybe have a poor man's, Bijan and Roshan again with those two as far as doubling it up. And, Sark loves to run. I think that's something. But, I mean, they believe they have back, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But you hate to see that. I don't ever want to play some team, where they're having to replace a lot or this and that or whatever. I want to play them at their best and beat them at their best so nobody can say anything, right? But regardless, though, they still say 49-0, even though we didn't play with the quarterback. And we ran Wildcat the entire game. But regardless, though, shout out to those boys. But with that being said, look, Jackson Arnold, I'm sure that you've heard the notes, and I'm sure that you've heard all the chatter on Twitter and all the other places and stuff in every corner that celebrates OU football. Guys, I would just echo the sentiments of Aaron Rodgers again. Relax. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you've ever been the best player on your team, or if you've ever been around the best player on your team, you understand that coaches, especially in preseason, especially in off season, they're going to put that guy or that gal on the team, probably the worst team, and see what they have. Can they lead? Can they do different things? Can they overcome these obstacles or these hurdles? Plus, at the end of the day, let's be honest, we're all still stuck in that Lincoln Riley mode, right? Because I told a friend today, I said, it's kind of like 40-year-old version, right? We're putting the defense on the pedestal back in that Lincoln era because we would get sucked in by their performance in the spring game and maybe some bowl games to think, okay, we're going to be better, and then we're just terrible, right? But that's not what you have here in year 3 of BV. You have what a lot of people, especially OU fans, would consider to be possibly a top 10 defense in the nation. Top 25 at the very least, right? That's the expectation for this defense. So when you hear that they're doing really good and they're beating the offense, you should welcome that because that means that iron sharpens iron. People, we got to get back in the mindset of knowing, of realizing, of feeling, of waking up and breathing it to the point where we actually remember that at one point in time, roles were reversed. Georgia and Bama, no. It was OU, Nebraska, teams like that. That's who was running the world, right? And what they have now is what we had and what we are getting back to, okay? And that's OU football, and that's the program tradition and history. But I think some people kind of forget that simply because the winning that we experienced on a Riley, that really disguise things. That's just my thoughts. That's my 2 cents. How you feel about that? Because I think Jackson is going to have a terrific year. I think it may take him a game or 2 to get into a flow, but who knows? He could come out there and have a 4 or 5 touchdown game against Temple and kind of set the world on fire to let people know, like, look, everything is better. Because you've heard his decision-making is better. You've heard that he's done this, he's done that. He's thrown some picks, but you've heard that there have been some really incredible plays made by the defenders, and you've seen some highlights of those interceptions. But you've heard really good things about him. At times, the offensive line, I know they're a bit banged up, but you've heard really good things about them. And some running backs, Javonte Barnes, which is, if we could get Javonte Barnes from his freshman year, but with a clear mind, a clear focus, and this junior sense of mentality or whatever, or upperclassman mentality, I mean, because I feel like Caleb Hicks should be in that rotation, and then Tatum, you hear he's just tearing it up. So I'll shut up. Mr. Mason, what do you think about that?
Okay, so 2 things. One, I talked to a source who saw several of the scrimmages to date, and this source, if I said you the source, told you the source, you'd be like, okay, they know defensive football, they know OU defensive football inside and out, and they have some historical perspective and some knowledge of what elite OU defensive football looks like. And they said the defense looks the best it's looked in 20 years. Okay. And they would know. Okay. So basically, then they also said that Jackson Arnold, basically they're throwing him to the wolves, right? I mean, they're pressing him in the most extreme circumstances. He's not being given, when Seth Luttrell calls the game plan for the season coming up, it's not going to look like what they're throwing him to the wolves, in practice. We've heard that the running game looks good, that the offensive line's making holes in the running game. I heard the running backs look really good in the scrimmages. Okay. So it looks really, really good. So if the running game is good, you can see Seth leaning on that while he sort of onboards Jackson Arnold the right way. So again, to go in the Wayback Machine, think about Sam Bradford's first year, right? We ran the ball a lot with Alan Patrick. DeMarco looked great. And basically Sam was able to onboard distributing the ball and a lot of play action. He had a running game to back him up. I think we're going to see something a lot more similar than that. You're going to see a heavy running game, and then you're going to see Jackson being able to aggressively go downfield with his arm and hit. Brennan Thompson's blowing the top off our defense. I think he's going to do that to everybody else. Not that his 30 yards per catch average didn't already indicate that he's a deep threat from last year. And again, I think Nick Anderson, deep threat. Andrell Anthony, he's starting to practice. He could be back. He could be a real factor this year. And if he could, that would be awesome. But you've got players, you've got a combination of guys. Burks obviously is a deep threat, just tearing it up in this camp. So I think, defensively, it's just a great looking defense. We've got the two best defenders returning that we've had in forever in Stutz and Bowman. And then you've got a 5-star in Peyton Bowen. You've got the defensive addition of Dominic Williams at nose. Ethan Downs is looking great. He's a 4-year player. Is he a superstar? No, but he's gonna give you excellent contribution. And then our Mason Thomas and PJ, could they both have really good years? They could. It's a projection.
Woolard is there too.
Woolard looks everyone says Woolard looks fantastic. And then everybody's talking about, I heard, this came to me from a friend who this came from George Stoyer on Sooner Scoop, on their podcast that Bauer Sharp looks incredible at tight end. And if you had an elite tight end with these wide receivers, these running backs, and then an O-line that's coming together, but is providing some running lanes, Jackson Arnold will kill folks all day behind that.
Don't sleep on a Jake Roberts or a Caden Helms. I think that you could.
Helms.
I think you could potentially see
he's
Mitchell
healthy again.
Yeah, I think you could see some parts of some plays for Mitchell. I think you can see some packages where he's in there just to kind of give him a taste of it to see if he's even remotely ready. I think that would be good. But kind of going back to the defensive side of the ball. I think one thing that kind of can separate this defense even from how good it was last year is the fact that I think going into the season you have a better idea, or you're more confident in what you want to do with the cheetah position. And I think that also with the guys that you have, I think you feel like, hey, we don't have to necessarily say, we're just going to play this cheetah all the time. If we feel like a team is trying to, be more physical, like an Auburn. Auburn is probably going to try to run at Dolby at first, especially because I see them doing a lot of QB run with Peyton Thorne, trying to just, move the chains and keep the chains moving, right? But I think that I think with this defense, you're able to become so multiple that you're able to play so multiple, that you can switch out of that, that package as far as trying to run out there with a cheetah per se, opposed to just being able to go a true 4-3 or, maybe just a 3-4 multiple to where you got your guys out there that you want. But I think that you're going to be able to really, really mix those looks up and really fill out the game. I think that this defense is a defense where you can either stay stingy with your lineups as far as what you want, or you could literally switch it up and say, okay, well, if y'all want to play big boy ball, then that's what we're going to do today. So we can, however you want it. And it hasn't felt like that in a while here at OU, that you can actually go out there and do that.
Well, and the other thing, I'm in chatting with some other OU fans, some other Sooner fan friends of mine, is that we're not quite used to believing year over year improvement can occur with defensive players. Right? It's like, oh, this guy's actually much better than he was last year. We're trained to not believe that occurs. Like for the longest time, cornerbacks were only good their freshman year, and then they would regress. They wouldn't, they never got any better. So, when you're hearing Kip Lewis is a lot better than last year, we're like, really? Defenders improve? I'm not really sure what that looks, we're so used to that, not believing that Kip Lewis is apparently looking fantastic, and now he's 15 pounds heavier, which just makes him a fundamentally better linebacker. For your point, if somebody wants to play big boy football, but OU wants to try and keep a little bit more coverage ability in there, well, they can play Bowen, Bowman, and Robert Spears Jennings, and Jennings is basically the size of a linebacker, but also provides coverage ability, really good coverage ability, lock down a tight end, for instance. So it's like I said, the reports I got on the defense was the defense looks awesome. It looks the best ever. And then you hear folks like Dusty Dvorak, basically saying the same thing, that, if they they're basically a pass rusher away, a legit third down, get to the quarterback pass rusher, whoever that might be, away from having just about every piece on defense, because you're not running on Terry and Williams.
And I think that you see BV be more aggressive with this defense opposed to being bend don't break. But I could see a lot of that. I mean, I could still see kind of a mix of that as well. But I mean, like I said, I'm excited. Shout out to my guys over there at the Championship Standard. Guys, go and watch that video. If you haven't seen that video, we break down a bunch of film. They've even done videos. They've had Kchris Mason on here on their videos as well. But shout out to our guys over there. They do a really great job of breaking things down. But man, when I went back and looked at the film that they were showing, especially of like the Seth Luttrell offense, you can't help but love fall in love with that offense, especially the running game, because people go back and like I said, Mason find highlights, all those different things, but go back and watch some of those run concepts. One thing that I would say, and maybe I'm not the keenest, if I may just make up a word, if that's even a word, maybe I'm not the keenest of people on the offensive line, but when I watch film on Seth Luttrell's offense, everybody on the offensive line looks active. They look like they're hitting somebody, right? What did Iker say on one of his pods last year? He said, one of the problems I have is that we got guys who are just out there. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, even if you don't know what you're doing, hit somebody. Go find somebody and knock his ass on the ground. It's simple as that. Just go hit somebody if you don't know what you're doing.
But Seth and Bill are like tight, right?
Yeah.
When Bill says the O-line does this well, Seth is going to be like, well, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Like if Bill says the O-line's doing this well, they're not doing that well, I think Lebby kind of was like, well, this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to kind of do it regardless a little bit. Like, this is my pony, and I'm going to ride it because it's really successful, right? Like, okay. But I can see Seth being a lot more when Bill says the O-line's not good at this, they're not good at that, but they're great at this, this, and this. And I can see Seth going, well, then we'll do this. You let me know when they're better at some of these other things, and we'll get them back in. But to think that Bill and Seth are going to be not coordinated in how the offensive line really works. Bill may say, right tackle Taylor's is a mauler, but if they're if they've got a really athletic guy over there, let's run at him and just hit him all day, so that when we do drop back, he's still he's still woozy from Taylor putting him in the dirt a couple of times.
It just felt like with this, especially with the inside, run game or whatnot. Like, look, people, it's kind of a stark difference. Don't get me wrong. Everybody is trying to do what Lebby was doing, which is kind of isolate and give your running back a chance to beat whoever's at that
one-on-one chance, right? One-on-one chance.
One-on-one that's coming out of that hole. However, when you look at this, I mean, Luttrell will give you so many opportunities to do really what you want. You got the cutback option there. You could just run straight forward. You can run through the trash. However you want to do it, he will give it to you. But guys look active on those offensive lines. Everybody is hitting somebody. And I mean, it's a lot of movement, and you just see, I mean, they're still all in line and they're pushing and all the rest of that stuff. And once that running back finds that hole or finds that and has enough wiggle to get through some of the trash, sometimes those could potentially be house calls. So you really like what he does, and just the flow of the game is what's really good as well. I think that's something that people don't realize. Even in that Arizona game, for what it's worth, you saw the flow of the game change. We went from being down 14-0 to being up 24-14. And I think a strong reason was obviously defense, but I think the play calling and different things, you saw the game management from Luttrell, which I think is going to be key for us this year, an awful lot, because I don't think that you're going to go and have 50-second 3 and outs whenever there's four minutes left in the game where you can ice the game. You know what I'm saying? You're most likely giving the defense the ball back with maybe a minute or so left on the clock,
Yeah, I think, and if the defense is as good as advertised, and certainly there are more skilled and football minds than me saying this, right? And they're all saying it. Dvorak, Teddy Lehman, just for the OU guys, they're all saying this. It looks fantastic. We don't quite know how that complements, how much that helps an offense, right? And how they can complement, how Luttrell can complement that with his offensive play calling. We're so used to outscore. A punt is a disaster, right? That we've been so conditioned for that for so long that, it may look at, Michigan, won a big rivalry game without throwing a pass because they could grind the ball and they had great defense. So you just don't know what the confidence of having a really good defense will do for the game management that OU will use on offense. And okay, let's run the ball and let's take some deep shots. And if we have to punt, we have to punt. It's not a disaster because our defense will get us the ball back. Every punt doesn't lead to a kickoff from the other team.
I hear you. I'm sorry. I was looking down at this high school football game. It is flat out raining down there in Georgia.
Well, it must be South Georgia. It's not raining here in Atlanta right now.
Oh my goodness! What is this? It's what, Woodward versus Carrollton right now?
Well, that should be in Atlanta. Okay, all right. I'm wonder why I'm not getting hit with rain.
You better step outside real quick. No. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think the defense is going to be lights out. I think we're going to be lights out on offense as well. I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised with Farouk being back. That helps you feel better. I mean, Gibson, it just felt like a blow because you felt like, man, we're so low, but we still are loaded because and I never disagree with anything because I feel like they know exactly what they're talking about, which they do. Iker and Lane. But the one thing I would disagree right now with Iker was like, hey, we don't necessarily have a guy on the field that or on this team that has maybe the intangibles that a Gibson had that could run like that. And there's truth to that, but I think there's also truth to
Nick Anderson's it's pretty. Nick is
not
not exactly
only that, but I think that this is a prime opportunity for a guy like Jaquez Petaway.
Yeah.
Can JJ Hester make some noise? I don't see him being an elite wide receiver, but can he contribute? Yes.
Well, you remember? Do you remember? So JJ Hester's from Tulsa originally, right? I think he's from Booker T. Yeah. Do you remember Quentin Chaney did nothing his entire OU career, right? Malcolm Kelly goes down. And he can't play in the bowl game. And Quentin Chaney had like 200 yards against Boise in that Horror Fest game because OU had no one else. He just stepped up and had 200 yards because he was like I'm finally getting on the field. I'm finally healthy. Hester's been hurt so much. That's the reason why it's not. I mean, he may have struggled to get on the field because of competition, but he's been hurt. He could
potentially make some noise. Obviously, like I said, Petaway. You're gonna have guys we just talked about, Brennan Thompson, but I think that you could possibly see Kearney.
Think about this: if Andrel Anthony is back, right? Andrel Anthony, Burks, and Nick Anderson out there as your primary three with Farouk, those four guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one hell of a wide receiver core if Anthony's back.
Carrion, you can have Carrion. You could have Kearney. I don't necessarily think that you see McDaniels or Raggins this year, but I mean,
Raggins might be the fastest player in the SEC.
Yeah,
I mean, legitimately. I mean, if he's faster than Brennan Thompson, that means which they say he is, right? That's what everybody says. He's faster than Brennan Thompson. That's like 10-2 territory. That's like 4-5 territory.
Like I said, I mean, you don't. I think people are like I said, it's talking season. We started on here by saying that it's talking season. I'm ready for the past to talk. You know what I'm saying? I think I got to see it. I'm going to the Temple game. Hit me up on Twitter, guys, or whatever. If y'all,
it's a great first weekend too, right? We get Friday night OU, and then
the rest of the way we get to watch teams, because I can't wait. I'll be honest with you, game I can't wait to watch. I can't wait to watch that Colorado State versus Texas, which I think Texas is going to beat them by 30 probably, but I want to see what they look like, what they're trying to do. Are they keeping it too vanilla? Because, they go to the big house the very next week. So it's really interesting.
Clemson, Georgia at noon on Saturday. Clemson, Georgia. That's my part of the country. I mean, that used to be a game every year they would play. For those that don't remember, Clemson and Georgia used to be one of the big rivalries in college football. I mean, play every.
Oh, go ahead.
But Clemson's supposed to be down, right? But they catch Georgia first game. They've lost a lot of players. First game you can drop a weird game, and you're playing a rival who has a lot of athletes. And sure, they're not using the portal to the degree they should. And I'm not sure what I think about Klubnik. But hey, Klubiak. Or is it Klubnik? No, it's Klubnik. I mean, Georgia could drop that Clemson game. Beck throws a couple of pick sixes, and they're not quite. It all boils down
to Garrett Riley. It all boils down to Garrett Riley.
Yeah, but I mean, but you're not when you're not playing Sanford game one, and you're playing Clemson, right? You don't have the layup game one. Weird things can happen. Like FSU could lose to Georgia Tech the week before in Dublin, very easily. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm glad we got the Friday night game with Temple, get settled, get things going. But yeah, it's talking time's over. But it's been again, I can't overestimate how much the defense supposedly looks great. Like the people telling me this, that they're just like, it's amazing. It's Kip Lewis and the linebackers, corner, safety, the big guys on defensive line. They're like, and if we could just if one of the defensive ends blows up and can attack the quarterback on 3rd and long, this defense is complete.
I need 14 or less points each of these first 3 games during the season. That helps me feel really good or validate what they're going to be able to do.
A cheap touchdown at the end doesn't bother me, but the first and second team defense, right? The top 20 guys that they're rotating in and out. If they're dominating, then that's what I want to see, right? I'm dominating, making turnovers. And, the other guy that was mentioned to me is that the special teams guy looks like they think they got a massive steal in hiring him, the Deacons guy from San Diego State, who now is not just an analyst because of that NCAA rule change, Chris. He's an on-the-field coach, right? Because analysts can now game day coach. Yeah. They're basically game day assistants now. So OU basically went out and got San Diego State's special teams were like top SP plus, like top 20 in the nation. OU's last year was like 110th.
Yeah.
So if OU makes a big leap in special teams, special teams cost us those 2 games last year.
And shout out to G Freaky, but that was a G Freaky problem. That was more that than the coaching was. I was just like, I don't know why you even tried to touch that. That's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if that guy comes in and takes special teams to another level, we've got great returners, right? Guys in high school who were just elite. I mean, Peyton Bone was an elite returner in high school, right? He was.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be aggressive, and that's the interesting part. I can't wait to see who's going to be returning kicks. You've heard a mix of guys, but I feel like you kind of know, but we shall see. What I was going to say, people, this is the last weekend without college football. Next week, it's not much, but it's honest work. The noon kickoff game next week is Florida State versus Georgia Tech over there in Ireland.
In Dublin. It'll be Georgia Tech is getting, I'm in Atlanta alone, a bunch of Georgia Tech grads. He's doing better. They won their bowl game last year.
Yeah.
FSU, I'm not a big DJU fan. I think they've dropped that drop off from the quarterback they had last year.
Yeah.
To DJU. I think that's a drop off for them. I wouldn't shock me if Georgia Tech, again, first game stuff. I mean, we saw it right with that Houston game, that BYU game, right? When you play first games at like neutral sites, things get a little weird, right? And your team isn't quite clicking yet. I mean, it's
it's going to be.
You got. I mean, and then the first weekend, the first real weekend, we got LSU, USC, and Vegas, and
and that's the reason why I'm so happy that honestly OU is playing on Friday. That way, we can get that game out of our system, do all of our pods or whatnot, and just enjoy football. Take it all in. Yeah. Hey, with that being said, also, guys, be on the lookout. One of the next pods that I'll be doing, I'll have Ryan Wallen. I believe that's his name. He is a Temple sports writer, right? So he's going to come onto the channel and help us preview Temple to kind of get ready for that game. So we're going to try to get back to doing those videos for you guys or whatnot. If you ain't got nothing to do, Mr. Mason, you might as well come on. We can ask some questions and just figure out kind of what is Temple doing. So I need to get ready and start watching my film because we're going to have him out there. So I definitely want to show him some love and have him come on here. But Mr. Mason, go ahead.
And one last thing. So once we have a time for Fasusi, I'll text you that and let's talk about if Fasusi puts on that OU hat. Maybe let's chat next Wednesday or Thursday and talk a little bit about
sure. For sure. We'll have to
take a victory lap because
talking
about that damn kid. Been talking about that damn kid for 5 months.
Yeah.
I mean, and the last 6 weeks, it's all I can talk about. It's like nothing else to talk about. What's going on with Michael Fasusi? What's going on with Michael Fasusi?
I would say make it brief. Just keep it brief because we're about to get up out of here, people. What would it, okay, let's put it like this right here. Ask you point blank and simple. Would it surprise you if he didn't commit to OU?
At this point, no. But I mean, it's right now, yes. But honestly, am I shocked by anything that's going on in recruiting these days? No. I mean, Auburn's printing money and flipping kids left and right from Bama. They're going to steal Notre Dame's quarterback. It's all the things I used to rely on recruiting. NIL makes very, very tenuous.
Yeah. Well, people, look, we gave you an hour and 12 minutes. We gave you 41, or you can go ahead and probably say 43 solid minutes of recruiting. So definitely eat that stuff up, people. And if that wasn't enough to fix your appetite, to satisfy your appetite, Mr. Mason, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you and how they can get to your Patreon, how much it costs, and all the rest of that as well.
One last time. So it is patreon.com/Sooners360817. You can find me on Twitter at CM_Sooners360. You can find me on YouTube just search Sooners360. You'll find my channel. And then the 360 Recruiting Podcast is on every podcast platform. And I will be recording Wednesday night somehow talking to you guys about Michael Fasusi's decision and talking OU recruiting. So 2026 should hopefully get kicking once OU gets back on the field. Kids will start showing up to games again. So we'll have some 26 stuff more coming. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm doing 31 players for 31 days in August. I just did 2 guys today. So go follow me on Twitter to go find out who I talked about. There were 2 huge mobile defensive tackles for 2026.
All those details, people, are in the bio of this video. Definitely trying to make sure that we get Mr. Mason out there even more than what he is. But yeah, for sure. Go ahead, like, subscribe, share, do all those different things. The Patreon, is only $2 for a membership?
$2. Yep, that's it.
So yeah, people, go ahead. And like I always say, and this is no joke, people who have worked with him, past, present, future, or whatever the case may be, no fluff, straight to the point, straight to the facts, giving you what you want to hear. It's not regurgitated stuff. This is actual him going out there, taking the time to really figure out what's going on, what's trending, trying to help people kind of put these these dots together, right? Put all these different things together. So definitely go check that out. With that being said, also definitely like, subscribe, and share this video, and subscribe to the channel as well. Like I said, we're trying to grow. We're this close to hitting 1,000, and you guys know what that would mean to the channel, because it's been all organic, right? We haven't really went outside the circle. We stayed in it. Y'all already know we're going to have a good time every time that we're on here. But yeah, definitely like, subscribe, and do those different things. But with that being said, people, have a great Friday night. Enjoy this weekend, because you guys know what's coming in these coming weeks. It's back to football.
You know, there's a lot of great OU podcasts, but there's only one where the horns are on.